Hello, everybody out there on Facebook. What is going on? Abby here. All right, so I'm going to share this to my group really quick. Voila, done. All right. Hi, guys. Happy Sunday. Thank you guys for those of you guys who reached out and said happy anniversary to my husband and I. We are so appreciative. Today is our 2-year anniversary. We've been married 2 years now, and we've been together for 4, and I think we've known each other for 5. Right now he is asleep on the couch behind my phone, so I'm talking a little bit quieter because I might wake him up. So welcome, you guys. I'm excited to have this workshop today. This is the final of the workshop. So we had part 1 on Friday, then part 2 yesterday, and then today is the final one for part 3. If you missed part 1, send me a message. I will have the link sent to you because now it has been taken off of my profile page. So now it is a private link, it is private training, and it will go towards the intuitive eating paradigm. So if you missed that, you can still watch it. It's just not here on Facebook at the time being, okay? All right, so today we're talking about guilt and shame around food. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about today's topic, although I gotta say, I really picked a loaded topic for you guys. Guilt and shame when it comes to food. This is a heavy topic, so I'm gonna do my absolute best to talk about it in a way that's pretty relevant to your life, my life, and anybody else that might be watching this. So when you jump on, say hi. Even if you're catching the recording, the replay, just say, hey, I'm on the replay. If you're here live, say hello. For whatever reason, like I've said so many times before, I can't see when you guys jump on. I see that there's some people watching right now. So if you can, just say hi and show me some love, and I'll show you some love. Let me see if I can somehow, let me see if there's a way I can actually see you guys. Let's see. No, there's filters and there's other things, but this is it. Okay, well, for whatever reason, if I'm able to see you guys later. Okay, let's see. Nope, that didn't do it. Okay, well, I see someone's giving me hearts. Whoever you are, I love you. It's either Jenna or Meredith, I'm guessing. Okay, so let's do this. Let's jump in. I want to talk to you guys today about guilt and shame around food and how to move through guilt and shame. And I say move through because there's a really important caveat we're going to get to in a little bit. But first of all, I want you and I to be on the same page when it comes to what is guilt and what is shame, because a lot of people use them interchangeably, and understandably so. Most of the time when people think of guilt and shame, they think that they mean the same thing. But when it comes to today's topic, they do have a little bit of a difference, and there is going to be some difference between them. So I want us to be on the same page about what they mean. So first things I want to start with is guilt. This is the fact of having committed a specified or implied offense or crime, according to Google. And really what I have come to understand as far as guilt is concerned is that it's really remorse for action and a behavior. This is something like, I feel guilty about eating this cookie, okay? So I feel guilty about it. And then there's shame. Shame, according to Google, is a painful feeling of a humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. But when I dug a little bit deeper into the word shame, what I came across was it really relates to self and it relates to our character. So when you do something and you feel shameful for it, it more so speaks to your character than just the action. So I want to kind of help you guys think of guilt and shame as similar but different, okay? So difference in the same, where guilt is saying I feel guilty for an action that I took, and then shame being I feel bad about my character. So there's a little bit difference, action and character. Okay, so are guilt and shame bad? Let's kind of start there, because I think a lot of the times guilt and shame can be two emotions that people will avoid like the plague. And we tend to feel bad for feeling bad, and then what we end up doing is we compound emotions. I don't know if you've ever heard of this concept, but basically it's like I feel bad for feeling bad that I ate a cookie, and talk about for a lack of better terms, like a shitstorm of emotions, because if you feel bad for feeling bad, you're literally just compounding emotions on top of each other, and it can be really hard to detangle them and unwire them. So are guilt and shame bad? I kind of want to touch on this, and the reason I bring this up is because I want to tell you guys about a time where I did something that I felt really bad for, and then I felt really ashamed of, okay? So this was maybe 10 years ago. I had made a lemon cake, like a 2-tier lemon cake, and I had made it for an ex. And I was in a place in my life where I was really lonely. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have a job. And I was in a state that I didn't really have anybody, and I was really depressed and lonely. And I made this cake, and I ate the entire thing. Like straight up, I ate the entire thing, like a 2-layer lemon cake. And I love lemon, and I literally felt like I couldn't stop myself. It was like the one and only binge that I've ever really had. And I remember feeling so much shame after that. I remember feeling not only guilty for eating the cake, so the action piece of it, but then I felt so shameful that I would engage in that behavior, repeatedly taking a bite, and eating the entire thing, that I was literally ashamed of myself. And so I felt guilty for the action, and I felt shameful about myself. So that's where the guilt and shame are different. Guilt, feeling bad for the action, shame, feeling bad about the character that we have displayed, okay? So that's where they're going to be different. So I want you to ask yourself, should you feel guilty for eating a cookie? Like, think about it like this. Should you feel guilty for eating a cookie? Should you feel guilty for eating 4 dozen cookies? And the reason I'm using cookies versus like a salad is because most people associate guilt and shame with food that they consider cheat foods. A lot of dieters will refer to food as good or bad, can have or can't have, cheat foods, treat foods, healthy, not healthy, clean food, not clean food, whatever it is. All right, so should you feel bad for eating a cookie? Should you feel guilty if you binge on 4 dozen cookies? Should you be ashamed of yourself for eating a cookie? Should you be ashamed of yourself for eating 4 dozen cookies? So I want to kind of dial it into the different ways that we can feel guilt and shame when it comes to food. So I mentioned this, food we shouldn't, I use the quotations, shouldn't eat, like sugar, processed food is usually what people feel bad about, which dieters associate as cheat food. And then a lot of people feel guilty or shameful for binging, my cake eating episode. And then a lot of people feel guilty if they eat something that they consider bad and then don't go work out because they didn't burn it off. And then a lot of people feel guilty if they don't eat everything on their plate. That's a big one for a lot of people. A lot of people who are raised in a house where they're like, you eat everything on your plate before you get up. So a lot of people feel guilty if they don't eat everything on their plate. A lot of people feel guilty if they're like at a family party or at a buffet or on vacation and they want to go back for seconds, but they feel guilty, so they don't. Or people go back for seconds and then feel really guilty about it, okay? Because it can go either way. People feel guilty or shameful for eating in front of people. I've talked to people who are terrified to eat in front of people. A lot of people don't like eating in front of others. And then some people have told me that they're worried, they feel shameful if they do eat in front of people, that people are judging them if they're overweight or if they're on a diet or if they're thin or if they're trying to lose weight or if they're even trying to gain weight. Okay, this isn't just about like weight loss. It's for people who are also naturally thin and feel guilty about eating food in front of other people. Okay. Another way that people feel guilty and shameful is overindulging on weekends. A lot of people who, are really good during the week, they'll eat really healthy during the week and they're really proud of themselves, and then they get to the weekend and then they say, I overindulged this weekend, and they feel bad about the weekend. Okay. And then Monday rolls around and they try to get back on the diet train. And then people feel guilty about vacations, family parties, gatherings, going out to restaurants to eat. People feel guilty if food is not organic or non-GMO or gluten-free. People feel bad and guilty if they don't, eat up to the standard of what they consider to be good or to be healthy. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways that guilt and shame play into food, and most of the time, what I have come to notice not only about myself and about others is that guilt and shame can be a way to punish ourselves. And this is an interesting kind of corner that we're turning here, because when people feel that they've done something wrong, they feel that if they punish themselves through guilt or shame, that they're evening the equation. Like, I did something bad, so now I need to punish myself. So now they're equal and it goes away. So that's why when people who eat really bad will tend to over-exercise, because they're trying to erase what they consider wrong to be right, which is over-exercising or whatever it is. Or it could be somebody who overindulged and then decides to not eat, because that's something that's pretty common, something I've done in the past where I was like, okay, well, if I eat this or since I ate that, now I'm not going to eat tomorrow. And that's really popular. A lot of people do that. And a lot of people can mask intermittent fasting with an eating disorder. And they tell themselves like, oh, I'm just doing intermittent fasting. I'm basically just starving myself because I feel bad about food. And then I'll eat a big dinner later. And that's just starving and binging and on a whole other level. So even intermittent fasting, if not practiced with a proper mindset, can become starvation and binging, which is pretty crazy, right? So we can create these really dynamic, self-defeating, self-destructing relationships with food, all because of shame and guilt. So I want to go back to those questions. Should I feel guilty for eating a cookie? Is guilt and shame bad? So when I told you guys that I ate an entire cake by myself, I felt guilty. Is feeling guilty about eating an entire cake by myself bad? Is feeling ashamed of eating an entire cake by myself bad? And my answer might surprise you, but I don't think so. Because if I didn't feel bad and I didn't feel ashamed about eating an entire cake by myself, I would continue to do those behaviors. I would continue to engage in that kind of behavior. But this is the defining difference with guilt and shame and what you do with your emotions. Emotions are like signals. And if we ignore the signals and we continue to do things the way we've always done them, then we're not learning from the experience. We're not learning and we're not listening to our emotions. But if we stop and pay attention to the emotion that we're experiencing, we can decode the programming, the thoughts, the beliefs, and the perception we've created. So when I felt guilty about eating an entire cake by myself, I felt guilty, and I'm glad I recognized that I had guilt, so that way I knew, hey, this isn't right. Why am I doing this? And I could question what was going on with me personally. And I felt shameful because it was out of my character to do something like that. So why would I engage in that repetitive behavior? So guilt and shame, when recognized and when questioned, when looked at, when you become aware of guilt and shame, are not bad. In fact, it's so useful to look at the guilt and shame from an objective point of view and understand what is the coding underneath the emotion. Why is it coming up? Instead of pushing it away and saying, well, I shouldn't feel bad. I shouldn't feel guilty for overindulging on X, Y, and Z. I should just do whatever I want. Because that's the problem. A lot of people in different types of, intuitive eating communities or, healthy eating or whatever, they say, don't feel guilty, don't feel shameful. You need to eat. You do what's right for you. If you want to eat it, go ahead, eat it. Where I come from a health and fitness background, and I say, no, you need to understand that if guilt and shame are emotions that are coming up for you, you're going against something in your own paradigm that is telling you that there's a red flag going off. Now, is your paradigm always going to be empowering? No, it could be disempowering. And when I say paradigm, I mean belief system. Do you have a belief system around shame and guilt and food? And if you do, what is it? And being aware of that paradigm, being aware of that belief system around guilt, shame, and food is going to be really important in order to work through it. So at the beginning of this training, I said it's important to work through the emotions and not avoid them. Because when we avoid the emotions of guilt and shame, it's like taking a beach ball and shoving it underwater and pretending it's not there. It doesn't make it go away. It makes it harder to hold it down until you eventually have to let it up, and it comes up regardless. So either way, that emotion is going to come up, but resisting it just draws the process out longer, where I encourage you to move towards the guilt and shame to understand what it is and to understand why it's coming up and what is the programming, the decoding underneath it. So when I work with people who have guilt and shame around food, I'm very curious as to where it came from and why and how it happened. Because most of the time, the guilt and shame around food is something that we have created and we have adopted earlier in our childhood, teen years, from either the people around us, an experience, our guardians, something that might have been said as a child, and we have said, okay, well, if I do this and I eat this way, then that must mean I am overweight or I'm a bad person, or I should feel bad if I eat this type of food, or I should never do this. And we create these rules and we create this programming in our mind where now we've associated food as an adult as good, bad, can't have, restrict this, can't do that. Because in my world at this point with intuitive eating, I don't want to feel bad for eating a cookie, because then the experience of eating the cookie is tainted by the guilt. And I just don't got time for that. Like, I don't want to eat a cookie and then feel bad about it, because it literally just ruined the experience of eating the cookie. But if I'm eating 12 cookies and there's no shame or guilt going off in my brain saying, hey, what's going on here? Why are you overindulging in false pleasure? Then we've got a problem. So most people that are experiencing guilt and shame are just trying to move away from it instead of trying to understand it. So in the intuitive eating paradigm, I want to help you understand where the guilt and shame is coming from. What is the programming? What's going on there? Where did it come from? And then we get to the root of it, and then we work through it. So in the first 2 weeks of the intuitive eating paradigm, we do a lot of healing, we do a lot of forgiveness work, and then from there, we can really start with a clean slate. Because if you're trying to build an intuitive eating lifestyle, but you always have guilt and shame around food being bad and what's allowed and what's not allowed, and then you're trying to build this intuitive eating lifestyle on top of this like cracked foundation, the whole house is eventually going to fall. And you're going to think you're doing intuitive eating, but you're still binging on cookies and telling yourself, oh, I don't have to feel bad about it. So it's not really doing you any good. So really what we have to do is start with a clean slate. We have to work through the guilt and shame, understand where it's coming from in order to move to an intuitive eating lifestyle. So it's part of the biggest process of the intuitive eating lifestyle that I wish I would have known more about when I first got started in intuitive eating. I didn't realize how big of the part of the journey that it was. So I kind of did things backwards, quite honestly, with intuitive eating. I went straight into the tools. I went straight into the mindset of an intuitive eater, but I didn't unravel and decode everything the way that would have helped me when I first started this journey. So working through the guilt and shame and understanding where it's coming from and why has been one of the most important parts of my journey. And also, for me, I know personally that if I were to eat chocolate all weekend long and indulge in all the false pleasure of processed food, sugar food, fast food, all of those things, if I were to indulge in that stuff all the time, that I would be purposely guilting and shaming myself. And in my opinion, people who are engaging in that type of behavior, who engage in behavior that they know is going to make them feel bad or shameful, it basically has something to do with their self-worth. They're really struggling with their self-worth, and they are, in my experience from what I've discovered working with clients and even myself, is that there's a victim mentality behind it. So somebody who engages in behavior that's harmful to themselves and is engaging and moving towards emotion on purpose and indulging in emotions like shame and guilt, and are doing that repeatedly, usually have a lower self-worth. And they do it because they need to prove themselves right. So in yesterday's training, I told you guys that when we have beliefs, we create evidence for our beliefs, because in our mind, we need our brain to be right. When we believe in something, we look for evidence to support that belief. When we are looking for something, we look for it. It's called the reticular activating system. Tony Robbins brings it up a lot. But when we're looking for something, when we bring awareness to something, we find evidence to support it. And so if we have a belief that I'm not worthy, no one will love me, I'll always be overweight, I will always struggle with my body, I will always be fat, I will always, eat crappy food because I'm addicted to it. And we have all these beliefs and we have all these thoughts we've accepted as truth. We need to create evidence and act in accordance with that belief in order to prove ourselves right. And we do it pretty unknowingly, pretty subconscious. And so in the intuitive eating paradigm, we penetrate the subconscious mind in order to reprogram it so that you don't act based on default. And our default programming is so hardwired within us, we have to extract what it is. So pause, we'll let it go. So with that being said, if you are somebody where you have engaged in behavior that you know is not good and you do it over and over and over, I encourage you to look at what you make it mean and what your self-worth is. We'll pause. My dog's trying to howl. Normally I would be howling with them, but since we're on this live training, I won't do that. So as I was saying, if you're somebody that is engaged in these, and I call in self-sabotage behavior, if you're engaging in self-sabotage behavior where, you know, you're eating food that you consider bad and you're doing it and you're indulging in it and you feel like you can't help yourself, there's usually a self-worth issue that's coming up where you have told yourself, I'm not worthy, no one will love me, I'll always be fat, I'll always be overweight, I'll always struggle with my weight, I'll always be big boned, I'll whatever it is for you, and now you're proving yourself right, okay? So I hope that makes sense, because that is where a lot of people fall into this victim mentality, and really, I'm just going to be totally blunt here, it is up to nobody to save you except yourself. And in this program, I give you the tools and I help you and I guide you. But in the end, it is truly up to you to shift from the victim mentality and the low self-worth, if that's what you're struggling with, to a much higher level of vibration, much higher level of emotion, emotional intelligence and awareness, but also understanding that guilt and shame, when you experience them and you're not indulging in them, but you're experiencing them to be aware of them and understand what's going on, is not bad. So guilt and shame, when you experience them and understand them, become aware of them, is not bad. It's not bad. But when you indulge in them and you ignore them, or when you are, you know, taking action to prove yourself right of your guilt and shame, that's when it's a problem. And that's where we have to do some decoding, deprogramming, unraveling of all the things. All right? So I want to leave you with this. I want to talk about how to move through guilt and shame and not around it. Because like I said, if you're trying to take this, you know, if you're trying to take this guilt or this shame and then shove it down underwater, it's not going to make it go away. Eventually it's going to come back up. So I want to help you move through guilt and shame so that you don't have to deal with it later. You can just do it now. Okay. So first of all, as always, I always say this, step number 1 is to notice where you feel guilt. Where do you feel guilt and shame around food? Where in the past have you felt guilt around food? Where do you feel guilt around food now? Do you label food as good or bad? Do you feel shameful when it comes to eating? In what way? And is it tied to a belief about yourself? Okay. Then step 2, are you in a victim mentality? Do you indulge in shame or guilt? Like, do you marinate in those feelings? Do you beat yourself up? Do you punish yourself? Do you feel like you need to punish yourself and feel bad in order to erase or make it seem like the equation's equal on either sides? Okay. And if so, why? Such a powerful question. Why? And what story are you telling yourself about guilt and shame? Like, you know, if I eat this food and I feel guilty about it and I beat myself up and I decide not to eat anything the next day, then everything's going to be okay. Like, are you engaging in this cycle of behavior that's self-destructive? And then what programming, what from your childhood kind of molded this paradigm, molded this belief system for you? And then your final step is acceptance. This isn't the final step, but it's step 3. We take many more steps throughout the intuitive eating paradigm journey that the group coaching program I do. But one of the steps is acceptance. And acceptance, said by the wonderful Carl Rogers, who was in positive psychology, said, the curious paradox is when I accept myself, then I can actually change. When I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. And when we accept ourselves, then we can change. Because if we are constantly rejecting ourselves, telling ourselves a different story, and we're not being honest, radically honest with ourselves, it's hard to change because it's like a moving target. And we're trying to avoid the emotions, trying to avoid the truth of our being. And if we do that, we can't ever really hit it head on. So accept in order to change. Accept yourself in order to change, because acceptance also requires awareness. And without awareness, you cannot change, as I've said many, many, many times. So that's it for today. This was our final 3rd workshop. So we had part 1 on Friday, part 2 is yesterday, part 3 is today, and the doors are officially open for the intuitive eating paradigm. It is my 6-week group coaching program helping you heal your relationship with food, ditch the diet mentality, and start and begin your journey on the intuitive eating process and learning to how to listen to your body and tap into your body's innate wisdom and awareness, how to know what food makes you feel good, what food doesn't, how to release even more guilt and shame around food. We go through and heal a lot of areas of your life. And I teach you the most powerful mindset shifts and tools when it comes to food, so that when you shift from healing your relationship to food and ditching the diet mentality and moving to an intuitive eating, you can do it in an empowered way where you can learn how to build that self-trust again. You can listen to your satiety and hormone cues, or your satiety and hunger cues. You learn about your hormones and so many other wonderful tools within that 6 weeks. And then you also get some one-on-one coaching as well. So if that is something you're interested in, the doors are officially open. We're going to begin August 25th, which is 2 weeks from today. So 2 weeks from today, we will start the intuitive eating paradigm, and it will be a 6-week journey. And the last day to join will be the 24th. So August 24th will be the final day to join. We start August 25th, which is a Sunday, and it is going to be amazing. So if you have considered joining, you've seen me post about it, you might have more questions, you want to see if it's a good fit, send me a message. Let's chat directly. I would love to see if this is a good fit for you. Otherwise, you guys, this was the final workshop. If you would like the hunger scale, which I mentioned yesterday, and the blank hunger scale to create your own, send me a DM. I'll even put it in the comment section with the link at the bottom. You can enter in your email, and you will get the hunger scale PDF, as well as a free live bonus training on how to survive social gatherings and eating out and vacations and parties when you become an intuitive eater. So especially as you shift into this lifestyle, so that you don't go overboard and go crazy. And you will also get the replay for all of these, as well as some other good stuff. So if you would like that, I'll post the link and you can enter in your email and you'll get those free trainings and bonuses and all that good stuff. And then again, Intuitive Eating Paradigm starts August 25th. It's a 6-week journey. Send me a message. There's tiered pricing depending on how committed you want to be in the program. So I offer some different levels and payment plans and that kind of thing. So if you're interested in that, send me a message directly, send me a message directly, and we can chat. Otherwise, you guys have a happy Sunday, and I will catch you on the next live. Bye.